Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening. Cheers to everyone for joining up in the session. So, I was going through the memories back, and I was actually correlating a quote from Oprah Winfrey in the morning, which says that if you look what you have in life, you will always have more. If you look for what you don't have in life, you will never have enough. So I was correlating that, hey, let's be respectful what you all have. And that's what all the theme of Cheers with Gaurav was, that, hey, I want you all to connect to all the professional that I keep on interacting. And similar goes with every single individual, because sharing is caring. And that what we all have been taught while growing up, that keep sharing and ultimately you will get a lot out of it. So, today is our first episode of Leadership Connect. So, what I was in thought, like, you all might be able to see me dressed up. And actually, the thing is, I'm a bit nervous and excited altogether, because this is something that I always wish to do with all of you, because learning from the leaders is equally important. Because what I have been taught by my parents, by my guide, by my mentors, that if you want to be a leader, you always need to be trained, being mentored, being guided by a leader itself. Let me give you a very small example that who leaders means to me. So if you can see, I'm having a small Sharpie, or I should say a marker. Now, to claim this to be a pen, there are a lot of things, because if you see, when I pulled it out, it was only the cap which was visible, right? So you just see a cap which is there, but you don't realize that it is actually a Sharpie or it is a marker. Now, if I open it up, this cap is a different identity. Now, this entire pen is a different identity. If I just pull it, roll it out, and pull out the ink, that is again a different part. Now, a leader, according to me, is someone who put down the different objectives, which are in different shape, different identity, different and unique characters that they hold, and bring down a structure to it. Now, if you have to call this as a marker or as a pen or as a Sharpie, you have to assemble all the different things like this cap, this ink, this sticker, this body of this pen, and then you make it as a complete team. So this is, according to me, what leader is all about, that you know the skill, you know the drills to basically accumulate all the teams together. So, what I thought of, like kickstarting the event today, is connecting with the leader who has always been a believer, or at least I should say that when I was going through him and when I was interacting with him, a particular quote defined his certain achievements, his experience. So, the quote from William A. Ward says that four steps of achievement: plan purposely, prepare prayerfully, proceed positively, and pursue persistently. So I'm talking about a man who has more than 37 years. You heard it right. It is 37 years of an experience. He started his journey as an engineering associate in 1984. Half of us are not even born at that particular time. But yes, he started his journey in 1984 as as a engineering associates with Telecom New Zealand. He went on growing and knocking the multiple opportunities, being a network engineer, being a consultant, account director, state manager, general manager, headward acquisition, regional manager, chief revenue officer, and from last 3 years, he's serving as the director of partner alliance with Red Hat Australia. He's a trusted leader, he's a motivator with integrity and a strong work ethic, who achieves the outcome in difficult and a competitive environment. And more importantly, he helps the acceleration of business growth keep on going. He's my friend, and moreover, he's a mentor to me also, because whenever I interact with him, I keep on understanding a fact that it's equally important to plan, but putting the planning in action is also is equally important. So let me bring on the screen my friend, my colleague from Red Hat, Garry Gray. Hey, Garry. Cheers. Good
Hey,
evening.
mate. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Thanks for having me. Oh, wow. I don't know. I'm gobsmacked at that introduction. Thank you. I'm
Absolutely our pleasure.
really excited to be here. I love the fact that you and I are kind of doing this together. But I'm feeling old. I didn't realize it was. Now that you've told me 1984, I always in my head kind of say 1990 is kind of when I started. Even then, there's probably many of your listeners who wouldn't have been born, right? So,
Yeah.
wow.
So
Thanks for having me.
37 years, Gary, and how it has been means, according to you, it just the time flows out, or every single day you learn something new. Yeah.
Yeah, look, well, firstly, it doesn't feel like it's 37 years, although I probably have a few grey hairs that might suggest maybe it has been. And look, yeah, every day, I've been very fortunate in my career, in my life, to learn something new every day. And what you do with that learning is up to you, right? Whether you actually take it and go and kind of enact it, or whether you just kind of put it in the back and kind of wait for a time when you might use it, or maybe you discard it, right? But yeah, I've been very fortunate to learn lots of different things, and as you and I have chatted many times, right? Start out as a
Yes.
telecommunications engineer, get into consulting, get into sales. I mean, I've been very lucky to have lots of great opportunities. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Means Gary, your life means even the 37 years that we have just seen over like a bit of my research, but it seems very awful that being a technical person who just graduate out of an university and now being working as a person who teaches everyone that it's not important of winning or losing. You need to go out and play. So, how you keep yourself motivated every single day to work out and go out and play?
Well, for me, it's pretty simple. Firstly, I've got a family like many people, and that's a big motivator for me, being able to provide for them.
Yeah.
Also, I love interacting with people, and that's, if I look back on my career, I'm not saying being a network engineer or being an engineer was ever the wrong thing, but I found that I wanted to interact and learn
Hmm.
and absorb and give to people. And so over my career, I've kind of moved more and more away from, let's call it, the physical item, and into the kind of emotional intelligence type items and roles that are much more around that kind of EQI space than around kind of building or physically doing something, right? So those things are motivators for me.
Right. So, yes, means that is even like I personally love to be with my family. And luckily, this pandemic has taught that, yes, the most important people are around you. You just have to give the time to them. Right. Yeah.
Correct.
So, Gary,
Absolutely.
I always have this one of the question because majorly my interaction is always with the students, and I believe that you can definitely help me in putting that particular part across. Is that you once said it to me that stop waiting for a title to lead, start delivering the results, and door will open, right? So, what would be your advice talking about like how the student should actually bit plan of their roadmap where they see that they have certain seniors on top of them, and they always like disgrace them their work, they don't appreciate or they don't get praise out of it. So what would be your advice for all the students? Yeah.
Well, so if we go back to that little bit, that
Mhm.
intro, this, leading is from where you stand, right? So again, I'm not a big believer in the title, right? There's plenty of people who've led in this world. Whether it's kind of the Greta Thunbergs of the world, she doesn't have leader or manager in her title, right? But her passion is obviously the climate change, and so she's been a leader in one sense. There's I've been fortunate enough to have some amazing people work in the teams that I've been leading, and they make my job as a leader incredibly easy because they're passionate about what they're doing, and they go out and do what they do exceedingly well. And my role then is to just kind of guide and steer and help, mentor and coach and direct them, to achieve the things that are their visions, right? So I think, I'm certainly a big believer that we're all leaders, right? And how we lead really doesn't require a title. It's really about what you do, the passion you have for doing it, and how you execute it, right?
Right. So it always just take a passion. To all the viewers means this is equally important that when I interact with Gary, he always give me an advice. So be open to the people to whom you interact every single day, because sometimes just interaction can give you a lot of advices out there. And that's what I love interacting, just like Gary mentioned, that I love interacting with people because every individual is different. So, Gary, my next question coming out of that way, it's like even you can see that the whole setup which I just did, like even to sound the stand of these balloons, to stack them up, there are some blue balloons, there are some white balloons, there is a yellow on top which has my smiling buddy out there. They all are of different sizes, they all have their different colors. Now, to stack them up, I was requiring a proper mechanism. And similar thing happens when you work in a team. There, every single individual comes out with the special skill sets. Now, you being as a director or being a proper leader who guides a lot of people, what is that quality that everyone should adopt to have alignment properly done, or in their career, what advice you would give to all? Like, the stacking is being done, but yes, there are some invisible qualities that you do possesses, and how to bring them up, or yes.
Oh, that's a great question. Look, I mean, I personally, when when I get the opportunity to build teams, and obviously lead teams, for me, it's about finding people that complement each other, people that recognize that they're not an expert in everything. They know what their core strengths are, but they have and they want to work with other people who then complement those core strengths with other core strengths, right? So a great example, I've been fortunate enough to work with some really great financial kind of accountants and financial controllers, and finance in terms of numbers and kind of that's not my strength, right? It's kind of I can do it. It's a thing that I do, but it's a thing that I won't say struggle with, but I prefer to kind of let. So I've been lucky to have people who've joined my team who that is a strength, and so but then they want somebody who will help them maybe with communication, which maybe isn't their strength, and so when we come together, we recognize that my strength is communication, maybe her strength or their strength is numbers, and then we're synergistic in terms of the way we operate. And I think when you build a team, that's what you look for, is you look for people that are going to give you a complete set of capabilities, and that more importantly, they recognize the strength that one of their colleagues has that maybe complements what they do, and that together that they can achieve more, right? And I mean, it's a little bit cliched, but that's the reality. The way you get all of those balloons to come together, as individual balloons, they're just balloons, right? But when you get them to come together, you've created an amazing figurine or person that you and I can now have a conversation with, right? Because together we've achieving more rather than half a dozen different balloons. I think that's answering your question, but
Right. That's what means the team means. Together, everyone achieves more.
achieves more. Yep.
Right. So that is equally important, because I personally see that if I appear for any interview, I got rejected. So I personally take on my stand that I was not capable of. But on the other side, now if I'm doing an interview, I know what I'm skill sets I'm looking for, because I want my team to grow. And every single balloon or every single individual has their own qualities. Might I'm not missing, or might I'm not getting fit into that particular stack. So my next question would be that how to handle these failures, because you might encounter a lot of people who got rejected. So what would be the advice to all the viewers and all the people who are going to watch it later, that how to handle the failures, or like
Well, I mean, look, let's be honest. Failure is painful, right? I mean, whatever it is, none of us like failing, um, you know, but I think what I would say to that is failing is an opportunity to learn, right? I mean, you've seen me post about that previously, and there's some variations on that. But if you go in with the mindset, which is, okay, maybe in that interview situation, I wasn't great at articulating my value proposition, or maybe my value didn't match what they were looking for in terms of skills. I would take away a couple of things. One is, how do I communicate that better next time in terms of making sure that I do articulate the skills that I think they're looking for? But then the second piece is, ask the question the other way. What specifically are you looking for? And I see this often. People are afraid to ask questions, particularly in interviews, right? I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people. I've been interviewed. You're interviewing me now, right? But I mean, if it's not a two-way conversation, then to my mind, that's not an effective interview, right? I want to know about the organization I'm going to work for. I want to know about the person I'm going to work for, the team I'm going to work for. What are the success factors for me in that role? That's the kind of stuff that I want to know. And then that organization wants to know, what's the value I bring? What are my skills? Have I done this before? Maybe I haven't done it before, but I've got some experiences that parallel or that are similar to what they're looking for. And maybe in coming in, I bring in a different perspective, right, than the one that's already in the organization, right? So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Asking questions is equally important. What I get it means, at the end of the interview, I always, like, even if I'm interviewing someone, I always give an opportunity to the other side of desk that if you have any questions, please ask, because I can then only provide a proper feedback. But you mentioned it rightly. So over all the viewers, I hope now you got the crux that even we as an individual who is sitting on the other side of desk, we are equally like aligned to your thoughts. We open your questions, so go ahead and ask the questions. And similar thing, an opportunity to ask the question for Garry also. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat and in the comment box so that me and Garry can answer them live. Definitely we cannot take all, but we will try to answer as many as we can. Jumping on to a very important aspect that like I personally see, Garry, a lot of students or a lot of like people does have the expectations when they start performing the work. I guess you has posted a very interesting article on LinkedIn where you said that, remember the rule: inspect what you expect, as what you inspect gets the respect. So it's all about inspecting the little things, not about expecting that you are going. Because when you set up an expectation, you already had an outcome in your head. So what is your take on that?
So I'm going to use a business example here, in the Red Hat world, if I can. So, we've got some amazing partners in our organization, and an amazing group of partners in our ecosystem, not in our organization, because they're not us, they're working for us and with us. And when I started, one of the early conversations I had with one of our partners was, and I'm just kind of being distracted by the fact that I've now got the sun across my face. So apologies to everybody who's watching, kind of wondering why he's got this white line across his face. So with that particular partner, that we were having a conversation about what they wanted from our partnership, and what were their expectations in partnering with Red Hat, and conversely, we asked them the same questions. What do you want from the relationship with Red Hat? Why do you see this relationship as being important, right? So that was the first thing. And we actually worked out really quickly that we wanted two different things from this partnership, right? Now, this is the same when you and I work together in a team, right? If we don't all have an aligned perspective and we don't all want to work towards the same goal, then actually it's not really a team, right? We're kind of a bunch of individuals who have come together. But equally, when we agree that we're going to go towards a particular goal, that we've got a destination in mind, if you will, then what we have to do is agree what are the metrics that we want to measure our movement towards that destination by, right? And so for me, having that kind of measure of the partnership and the value that we have, and our move towards those goals is really, really important. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you sit down with your team or with a partner or with anybody and say, hey, this is where we're going to go, and these are the things that we're going to measure our journey towards that destination point, but then you don't do that, it's kind of like saying I'm going to go and climb Mount Everest and you never leave home, right? I mean, you lose credibility straight away. So for me, it's jointly agreeing where we want to go. It's then setting a series of metrics, and some of those need to be lead and some of those need to be lag. And then more importantly, it's about actually doing the measurement. Because once we start measuring, then we can see, are we on that journey to that destination that we agreed we would go to? And if we're not, we can start taking corrective actions and corrective steps, right? And that's kind of where this whole topic that you gave me, which by the way, I love. I've got to say, I love the title of the session. Plans are nothing, planning is everything, right? Because that's a quote that Dwight D. Eisenhower, it was attributed to him, but the actual quote is slightly different, or the full quote is slightly different. But when you've got a journey and you're heading towards it, if you're not measuring your path towards it, then you're in trouble, for starters. But secondly, when we go there, things will change, right? We build a plan to go to Mount Everest, and then a pandemic happened, and so we couldn't go to Mount Everest. Then what are we going to do to kind of change that plan, right? To still get there. And so, I think for me, that's the important bit is, if you build a plan, you've got to be able to measure that plan. You've got to accept that some of the things that you plan to do are going to probably not happen, or they're going to get disrupted. And then how do you react to those plans? And if I go back to that example that I gave when I began this little bit, where the partner and Red Hat sat down and we talked about what we wanted to achieve, and there was a misalignment, the first thing we did was we got each other aligned, or we agreed a common ground. Then we established a measure or measures. And then, once every 90 days, we sat down and reviewed those in a formal sense, and the progress that we were making in a formal sense on that journey. And I got to say, that partnership has been incredibly successful. I think if the partner was on the call with us now, they would say the same thing. So, but it's because we put those things in place.
No, absolutely agree. Means losing something doesn't mean that you lose everything. So it's better to lose something and then take the things ahead, because that is ultimately how you have planned, and you put down a planning to it, and ultimately the measurable outcomes are there, because outcomes are important. And that's where we say that results give you the like the shines that what you have been doing, the work that you have accomplished, and all other things. So all the people, if you want to ask any of the question, please feel free to put down in the comment section, and I'll be straight away taking that liberty to ask to Garry, and let us guide them all. So Garry, first question coming from Vishal, that how do you encourage creative thinking within particular organization, and how do you handle the difficult situations?
Two great questions. So I think the creative thinking piece, I'm going to go back to a conversation that you and I had, Gora, which is about empowering people rather than micromanaging people, right? Sorry, I'm just trying to move to get away from that light a little bit. Hugely distracting. I'm actually just getting it dealt to right now, so we'll be back, and then I won't have to dodge it. But there you go. Look, so look, I think to answer the question, it's about creating an environment where people can innovate, where people can be collaborative. Because I don't think, again, Gora, when you and I spoke about this, right? No one person has the answers to every question, right? And in my experience, in my leadership experience, in my work career, in my personal life, I've always found that when I talk to people about my problem or my challenge or whatever, that often their thinking and my thinking combined get us a better outcome, right? So how do we encourage it? We try. Well, my view is the way that we approach it is to be really collaborative and innovative, allow people to kind of put even silly ideas down. Well, I'm say silly ideas because there's no such thing as a silly idea, but things that are kind of a bit maybe off the agenda, and see where they take us. Right. The one thing that I think you have to avoid in creative thinking is not kind of question and micromanage people's thought processes, but actually allow them to evolve and see where they evolve to. Right. So I hope that answers that question for Vishal.
Yeah.
In terms of how to deal with difficult situations, look, kind of depends on what the problem is, I guess, or the difficult situation is, right? But I mean, I think certainly candidness, honesty, I think would be the two things that I always kind of like to use as guiding principles in dealing with difficult situations. And remembering that the person that you're talking to, if it is, talking to a colleague about something that's a difficult conversation, etc., is what would it be like if they were talking to you? How would you want to be communicated to, right? And if you can kind of have that honest approach, but also put yourself in their position, and kind of imagine what it would be like for them and how you might react in that situation, then that those things would be a good guiding principle, right?
Yeah, being honest to your work has always been my key strategy also, because until unless I'm honest what I'm doing, how the other person can expect the good out of me. So
Correct.
absolutely correct. And thank you for answering. I hope Vishal, you got the crux now. So next question is coming from Tejaswini, and she's asking that, hey Gary, how do you handle the multiple tasks?
Oh, look, in every aspect of our life, we're always getting lots of requests for, to do things. I mean, a young family, you got 3 or 4 kids, they're always all wanting your time at the same time. You've got university pressures, you've got multiple goals or multiple things you've got to achieve. Look, I think it's a case of prioritizing things, and focusing on those things with the priorities that you set. Now, again, going back to the guiding principle of this session around, plans are nothing, planning is everything, except that sometimes when you're heading towards that thing you prioritize, maybe something else becomes more urgent or a bigger priority, and you need to kind of refocus or adjust your focus so that you can to work on that. Sometimes it's not easy, right? I mean, if I look at my to-do list every day, sometimes I look at it and go, how am I ever going to get through that, right? But, my suggestion on that is you've got to make a start. That's the first thing. Every journey begins with that first step, right? And if you don't make a start on it, you'll never get it done, right? So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely means I'm getting that same part, because from last 8 9 months, when my leader, my guide, actually she asked me to put down the things what you want to do in a day, and then proceed with it, because prioritizing is equally important that what you do in day to day life. So to bring that professional and passionate balance, we need to do certain things that are important and just leave letting it go, that you also mentioned during our first take. So I hope that also answers Tejaswini's
Yeah.
question. There is a very great question coming out from Pallavi, and she said that, how do you deal with the situation when there is a disagreement within your team? And thank you for joining us on today. Yeah.
Again, another great question. Look, I don't think there's any secret sauce in that. Well, maybe there is, and I haven't learned it yet. I think the way you do it is accept that we're all going to have differing opinions, right? I mean, that's what makes us a wonderful kind of society, is that people have differing perspectives. And I think, again, go back to the question around, how do we encourage that creative thinking? We want those different perspectives, because they're where the creative bubbles and those creative ideas come from. If we're focused on it in terms of the negative, which is people are angry and they're arguing with each other, then that's a different conversation, and that's one where you've probably got to back it off and understand what the underlying cause is that's creating that conflict between those individuals. But if it's a differing opinion around, an executable in a plan or something that we want to do, then again, for me, that's about having a mature conversation, kind of understanding all of those perspectives and then trying to get an alignment, right? So I go back to that example of the partner that, 3 years ago when I started at Red Hat, they had a perspective on wanting to be our best partner in Australia and New Zealand, which was fantastic. It was a great goal, but it didn't align with what our expectation of them was. And
Right.
equally, when we talked about what we wanted, that wasn't what they expected. And so again, what we've been able to find is a really good middle ground, which has now become a point where we both rally and we both, we're successful off the back of that, because we've found a mutual ground where we can work together and be successful together, and a common goal, right?
So aligning them to what they expect is equally important. Understand them, talk to them, and clear all the misconceptions that they had.
Uh,
Absolutely correct.
and it's what you talked about before, right? It's that transparency, that integrity, that honesty,
Yeah.
being able to have those open conversations. Some of them are going to be difficult, don't get me wrong, right? I mean, we are going to always have difficult conversations in life, in business, or whatever, but if you
Mhm.
approach them in a manner which is, as I said before, put yourself in the shoes of the person you're having that difficult conversation with. Think about what their reactions might be, how you would want to hear that, those kind of things. I think that will be along those two things: the honesty and the integrity, and the kind of thinking about how that other person might hear it, will go a long way to helping you have those difficult conversations, right?
Thank you. Thank you for that insight, Gary. And thank you so much, Pallavi, also, and all the viewers who have joined. And another question popping out from Neeraj. And he said that, what do you prefer when it comes to hard work versus smart work?
Look, well, I'd like to say that I work smart, and that would be the way I'd like to approach everything. But
Right.
sometimes in life, even working smart isn't going to get you the results you need. Sometimes, we talked about it before with that William A. Ward quote, right? It's about
Yeah.
persistence, and sometimes persistence means hard work, right? So, I'd love to say everything we did was smart work. It's not. Sometimes you just got to grind it out, right? I mean, I'm not a. You can probably tell by my headshot and my shoulders. I'm not a marathon runner. I'm probably not the build of a marathon runner, right? But in the sports that I used to play, it was often about the grinding it out and being mentally tough to keep going, right? So.
No, definitely correct. Means I also relate to this particular part that whenever my students always ask me that I'm like a backbencher. I know how to work smartly, but I always says one thing that smart work can help you to get one task complete. But every single time, being persistent can only be achieved if you have done a hard work and you have done the basic understanding of that work completely done. So yeah, I believe hard work equally important. Sometimes a smart work might outshine, but hard work will give you that persistence that you said.
Yeah, and actually, you make a really, really good point. If you haven't
Mhm.
done, the preparation. So again, we're going to go back to the theme of I love this theme. I told you, I love that title of the session, right? But if you haven't gone and done the hard work, if you haven't built the plan, if you haven't kind of done the learning that you need to do, the thinking that you need to think about how to get to your goal, and maybe you haven't even set the goal, right? I mean, I've been in some sessions, some coaching sessions with some people, and you say, so talk to me about your goals, and they go, I don't have any. And you kind of go, how can you not have a goal, right? And what it isn't that they necessarily don't have a goal. They haven't necessarily done the thinking to be able to articulate what the goal is, right? And so I think goal setting is really important. Focusing on the outcome, staying focused on the outcome, right? I mean,
Mm.
what was the destination we wanted to get to? Why did we think that was important when we started the journey? Those will be the things that carry you through. So again, going back to the hard work, smart work, when I think about it the way you just put it, right? The hard work often is the thing that you're going to have to do more of, both
Yeah.
in terms of the preparation and the planning, but also when it goes wrong. Because heaven forbid, no plan. I love that you and I were chatting about this, I think last week, right?
Yes.
When we were talking about the title, and I said to you, my first reaction is that Mike Tyson quote, right? Where he
Yeah.
says, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face, right? And something will happen. You've got a plan to go somewhere, to do something, to achieve something. There will be things that go wrong on that journey to that, and it's how you react to those things, right? And what you then do to adjust your plan, or to maybe change your approach to it. So again, going back to your interview question, if you've been rejected in that situation, what should you do? Well, reflect on it for a little while, right? What could I have done differently? What could I have done better? Maybe I could have asked some other questions, which would have then allowed me to position my capability slightly differently, right? It is always going to be about doing the hard work, but then adjusting yourself,
Absolutely.
learning, continuous learning, right? You and I, we're
Yeah.
fortunate enough to work for an amazing organization where continuous learning is an
Yeah.
important part of developing us as associates, right? And sometimes I think to myself, oh, I just don't have time for this. The reality is you have to make time for that,
You have
because
to make
that's
time.
what takes you to the next step, right? So.
No, absolutely means I personally love that part, and I can share one of my sweet small experience that during this pandemic I gained a lot of weight. And one day I was just sitting in front of the screen and I realized that no, man, I have literally gained a lot. I have to do certain things to make the health better. And as you said, that I was always giving excuse to my mom and dad that, hey, I don't have time. I'm always on the calls. They actually said, you have to make the time out of it. All got 24 hours. You do the hard work. And literally, once I started doing all the part, now I'm even able to manage the works well. So yeah, you rightly said.
Yeah, look, and that's another great example, right? Where you and I are going to share
Yes.
some commonality. I definitely put on weight during this pandemic. I know I'm not as active as I was. So one of the things I love doing is I love getting up early. I love, best part of the day for me is the sunrise. I love sunrises, right? And I'll tell you why I love
Mhm.
sunrises. It's a new beginning. Every
Yeah.
day
Oh,
when you see the
great.
sun come up, that for me, that's a mental switch to go, it's a new day, new beginning. I can do something differently today that I didn't do yesterday, or I can behave, or I can do, so I love going for a walk in the mornings. And some of my friends and associates, who know me well, follow me on Instagram, and they see my posts in the morning, and they're usually sunrise posts, right? Except for the
Yeah.
maybe cloudy days. But they kind of go, why do you always do that, right? Because for me, that's a really powerful kind of motivator to, it's a new day. I can do things differently. I can be better today than I was yesterday. And that's, again, that's the thing for me. It's not, if I made a mistake yesterday, how do I do it differently tomorrow, right? How do I be better tomorrow than I was today? Not that I made the mistake yesterday. Sure, we all make mistakes, right? Plans are going to fail. We're going to get things wrong. It's how do we be better tomorrow than we were today? Not, how do I make the
Yes.
mistake better, but how do I be better at what I was trying to
Better.
do? Yeah.
To be the better version of yourself. And trust me, I do have the goosebump when you said every single sunrise is a new beginning. Yeah, means I certainly realizes this part that whenever I am into the gym and I'm hitting a weight hard, I realize that yes, I am getting better version of myself. That I was not able to walk for 5 minutes, now I'm running for 50 minutes. Yeah, you have done a good every single day. So yeah, I believe Neeraj, you got the answer, and thanks for bringing that question up so we could have this meaningful conversation. Another question coming out from one of my friend Nikhil, and he is asking: at a given point, there could be multiple plans in your head. So how do you manage to not hopping on the frequently and focus on one? Yeah.
So the first thing that I would do, Nicole, is get them out of your head and get them on
Mhm.
paper. because that'll help you get some clarity for starters. And then the second thing goes back to that, what we were talking about before, which is prioritization, right?
Yeah.
What are the things that I want to focus on? What's the thing that's important to me right now? Is it being on this call? Is it going and seeing my wife? Is it going seeing my family? Is it, spending some time with my friends? What is the thing that's important to me? And then prioritizing that, right? That's probably as simple as that, right? I'm not sure if that's necessarily answered the question, but I think it's about documenting what the things are that are in your head and then deciding which ones are important. One of the challenges in our life is everything's important, right? I too often, and I loved your show on being able to say no, right? Because it's sometimes you got to say, look, I understand that's important, but I can't do it now. And it's
Yeah.
important to you. It's not important to me, right? I mean, got to be careful with that because people might react badly to being told. But it's the reality, right? Is that in my priorities, that's not a priority for me right now. This one is, and so I've got to focus on that, right? So
No,
hopefully that answers the
definitely.
question.
No, definitely. I hope Nikhil got the point, because for me also, when I started documenting it, I have now structured the first step of my plan, that you wrote it down. Now you know what you have to do and what you not, because things going in your head, and you said that yes, whenever you see someone, you definitely have something that they have, you not have. So that's why I kick off my session today with the Oprah Winfrey, where she said that if you start looking at yourself, you have always more. But if you start looking at somebody else's plate, there will be certain ingredients that is not there, so let it go, no problem in that.
Yep.
And thank you for Nikhil for bringing up that question. I have another question coming out of Soumya, that what are your opinions for good time management, do's and don't? And thank you for joining us, Gary. Yeah.
Thank you. So look, I mean, again, I think it's prioritization.
Mhm.
It sounds a bit kind of cliche, but I think it is about setting priorities and then putting boundaries around those things, right? I mean, we're in a university situation and we've got a paper that's due, on Friday. Then we need to plan for what are the things we need to do to achieve that paper to be delivered on time. So for me, it's about what are the priorities, and then setting the right time allocations to some of those tasks that need to be completed to get to that goal, right?
Mhm. Means definitely yes, prioritizing is equally important, and ultimately the time management will get in aligned to that particular thoughts.
Yeah.
Absolutely correct. So, and Soumya is just getting started with Red Hat intern, because I know her personally, and she was the one of those to whom I have interviewed on my Cheers with Intern session. So cheers to her for
Yeah.
joining in our family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, again, it is about,
Mhm.
you're always going to have lots of tasks being requested of you, particularly as an intern. Um,
Yeah.
I was kind of there many, 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 many years ago. But you're always going to have lots of people demanding things of you, both in your business life and in your personal life. And you need to prioritize the things that are important. And then you need to communicate. That's the other thing, right? I see this a
Yeah.
lot where people go, yeah, all right, I'll do that for you. But then they kind of, and somebody says, oh, I need it by Friday. Yeah, that's okay. Right. And then somebody else comes in with a more important task and they say they want that done by Friday. I often see people forgetting to go back to the first person and say, look, I know I said I could get it done by Friday. However, I've been, these other things have happened and I'm not going to achieve that. Can we do something maybe where I can get it to you by Monday, or I can get it to you by Friday night, or, or maybe we can get somebody else to help us achieve this, right? So communications is really important in time management, right? Because once you've set those priorities, if things change, you need to be able to communicate that. But that's also the same with planning, right? Things will change, right? You
Yeah.
build a plan, Planning is everything. You've done all the pre-thinking, you've done the goal setting, you're on your way, something comes along, something changes. You need to be able to communicate that there's been a change. You need to reassess that plan. You need to go and kind of replan if that's required, or at least communicate what the
Mhm.
impact of that change is, and then help people will help you then kind of reprioritize, right?
Absolutely. Means they all are doing the great new beginning and communication, because sometimes they feel that, yes, somebody has assigned a task to me. Yeah, I need to do it. But equally important that if there is something which is already scheduled for you, you take the priority call, you make the decision, and be open in your conversation. And thank you so much for letting us know, Gary. And I hope Soumya get the question done. So, Gary, I have a very interesting question coming out of that way also. That I can see that bull like sticker, which is just at in your back. I was always curious to know this philosophy that there would be some bulls and bears in the market. Bull is gonna just throw you up, and bears will be there who is gonna let you down.
Tear you
So
down. Yep.
rise and shine and getting up and down are the parts of life, because you rightly said right now that everything is going to get changed while you take the step ahead. Might there will be stones, it's your decision to take them up and build your empire, or you just take that hit and get hurt yourself. So what would be your advice, that or how you yourself keep yourself motivated them when these ups and downs comes to you?
So, firstly, I'm going to pick up on something, and I love the fact you did
Yeah.
this. You talked about stones, right,
Yeah.
and building. Um, so,
Mhm.
I have a quote that I came across, and unfortunately, I've not been able to find the research on who actually came up with the quote, but I've used this many times recently, right? So,
Mhm.
the only difference between a stumbling block and a stepping stone is how you use them, right? So I loved your entree
Okay.
into stones because it's allowed me to use that quote, right? But
Yes.
but you know, to go to the motivation question, um, think about the positives, think about the things you want to achieve, think about the direction that you've agreed you're going in, and what that means for you, what that means for the people around you. That for me is the motivation, right? As I talked to you before, I love my family, I love my team, I love the organization I work for. They're all motivators, but also so my friend community and the people around me. And so being active and being part of that, and being somebody who wants to contribute but also learn from those people, that's a motivator for me, right? um, the getting up in the morning and going for that walk and seeing the sunrise, and it doesn't rise every day. Well, it does rise every day, but you don't get to see a sunrise every day. For me, that's a big motivator, right? That reminds me that I can be better today than I was yesterday, and that's my motivation, right? There's a question there I just saw pop up right
Mhm.
around the other side of that, which is how do you handle failure?
Yeah, Rudra
Um,
just posted up.
yeah, and that's I talked about it before. Failure in anyone's world, failure is the thing we least want to have happen, right? Personally, none of us like to fail when we think about it in the negative sense, which is you didn't get to where you wanted to go. But if you think about it in terms of the learning experience, which is failures are going to happen, what can I learn from that failure, and then reapply so that I can be better at it, then
Mm.
that's going to be the outcome you want, right? So how do I handle failure? I accept that they're going to happen. Um, and then I try to go back and analyze, okay, it happened. Why did it happen? Was it me? What could I have done differently? How can I therefore kind of, address that and be better tomorrow? Right.
Right, means that was able to correlate to my life, that if you are gonna play any game, any of the game for matter, like if you are gonna like go and play cricket, definitely if a bowler is bowling, your responsibility is to bat, and you might get out, and you wish that I could not, but yes, eventually there will be someone who is going to make you out. And similar thing when happens when you're with the entire team in a football game, somebody is going to come and score. So there might be some failures, and you rightly said, accept it. And that's the best thing that anybody can do. So,
Yep.
Rudra, I hope you got the question. One of the last question, which I would love to take from the audience, is coming again from Vishal, who says that what are the few resources you would recommend to someone looking to gain insight in becoming a better leader?
Oh, great question, Vishal. Look, I think I'm gonna take our conversation again of a couple of weeks ago, right? Talking to people, talking to other leaders. I was very fortunate to work for a number of great bosses throughout my career, and maybe some not so great. But the thing that I observed in watching the great ones was that they were happy to share their experiences, happy to share their perspectives. They usually did so in a coaching way, right? So they weren't telling; they were actually helping me to kind of do the thinking that I needed to do to become better at what I was doing. So I think it's talking to other leaders. Look, read. I probably don't read as much as I would like to or should do. Not making any excuses, but I tend to try and read a fair bit, and certainly these days much more electronically than physically. Although that said, I'm heading off on leave at the end of this week, and I'm not taking my iPad where I've got a number of books with me. I'm actually taking the physical books, and the reason I'm doing that is I actually want to do a tech detox, right? So,
Mhm.
I know that if I've got my iPad and I've got the books on my iPad, I'll be distracted by the notifications and the emails and all the other things that happen on my electronic device. So I'm actually taking the hard copy books with me, and there's probably a few people on the call going, why would you do that? But it's for exactly that reason. I'm pretty sure that if I go back to reading some of those hard copy books, I'll be less distracted, and it'll probably absorb a lot more of the messages in there. So I think it's talk to other people, talk to leaders that you think are great leaders, and if they genuinely are great leaders, they will share their experiences, they'll share their insights, they'll share their
Yeah.
knowledge. Again, I've been very, very lucky in my career to have some great bosses, but I've also worked with some great people who in their own right have been amazing leaders. There's a gentleman called Dr. Neil Carrington who I was fortunate enough to sit on a board with many years ago, and Neil's an authority on leadership here in Australia and around the world. But he was always somebody that I could turn to and talk to, and he would have a perspective, and those things are incredibly valuable. Even if it's just their perspective. Again, if I go back to where we began the conversation, what you take from that and whether you actually execute it is completely up to you, right? And I would
Yeah.
encourage people to think about it, not just take their perspective and then go and execute it, but actually think about it in the context of your situation. Is it right for you? Maybe it's not right for you. The last thing that as I said, I began as an engineer because I thought what I wanted to do was work on the physical and kind of be very much, the introvert that actually I am. But what I learned was that I got my energy and my enthusiasm by working with people. And as an engineer, I didn't always get that opportunity to kind of work with people. Sometimes you had projects that were very kind of inwardly focused. And yet the roles I've been in the last probably 20 years of my career are much more kind of about people and interacting with them. And so I get an energy and a passion from that. Doesn't mean that I don't miss some of the things that, are a great as an engineer. I still think I approach my thinking quite logically, which was a big part of my engineering practice and kind of learning to be an engineer. That to get from A to D, you've got to go through B and C to get there. And so, when I think, I like to think I think logically, those kind of things, right?
Yes. Distractions always will like sometime be helpful, and you rightly put it across. Like if you have an iPad, definitely you're gonna serve a lot of things rather than you're doing the primary goal, which is to read. So yeah, I guess now I'm more curious. So I believe the people are definitely loving our chat and they are getting a best out of it. And that's the reason they are putting down some of the questions. Let's take one or two more. And Aman has just put it down a question that do you agree with an idea of celebrating the failure as well?
Um, I think if you're celebrating it in the context of learning from the mistake, yes, I think then it's
Okay.
valuable to do that. If you're celebrating it in terms of and maybe even, and I'm thinking on the fly here a little bit, but if you're celebrating it in terms of accepting the fact that yes, it was a mistake, but you at least did something, then again, I think that's okay to celebrate, right? If you're celebrating it in terms of it was a failure, maybe not so much, right? But I think in terms of a learning experience and in terms of it is progress, or at least it's maybe closure of one of the paths on that journey that you're going, because you've now been able to eliminate that as the way to forward, then I think it's appropriate to celebrate that. I do genuinely believe, though, that the greatest motivation and inspiration is celebrating the successes, right? So, and it doesn't matter, if it isn't the overall goal that you're striving to achieve, it's the little steps that you're making along the way. You need to celebrate those. And in fact, last year, working with my team, when I reflected on the year that was one of the things that I don't think I did enough of, or us as a team did enough of, was celebrating some of the little successes along the way that we had to achieving our overarching goal, right? So,
Yeah. No, definitely. I personally always say is that success is all about celebrations, but failure is always about the learnings. So
yeah,
even if you are failing, learn out the things and don't commit the mistakes. And even in my last session, our expert Kennel actually told us that yes, if you are falling down, learn from it and learn from the mistakes of others also, because you don't have time to commit it back again. And that's
yeah.
how you start progressing the things. Yeah.
And it's only a mistake when
Mm.
you don't learn from it, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
to
Yes.
me, there's going to be failures, right?
Yeah.
As I said, it doesn't matter what you were planning. Personally, I planned to travel a lot last year, right? That didn't happen, right? There were things outside of my control that meant we didn't get to travel. The furthest I traveled last year was 3 hours down the road from where I live, right? So that wasn't what was in my mind in terms of when I began the year last year. But what? So you know, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, couldn't do anything about it, accept it, move on. But now what's probably come out of that for me, not probably has come out of that for me, is take every opportunity that's presented to you, because you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, right? So
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. So, just a last question for sure, coming out of Abhineet, and he's saying thank you for being here. And he said that how to handle the self-doubt condition, kind of a situation like what are you doing is really the thing you're passionate about, or do you need to change in your mind of the other's interest?
so so you know what? I'm gonna open up a slightly different topic here.
Hmm.
And I'm going to pay homage to one of my team, a gentleman who joined us actually at Red Hat in the team earlier on last year. A gentleman called Evan Soper. I don't know if Evan's listening, but I know I've seen a couple of my team are listening.
Yeah.
So, but Evan explored with us the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. I don't know if you guys have come across that,
Mhm.
but it's all about mindset, right? It's all about believing that you can do something, as opposed to this fixed mindset, which is kind of limits you to what is possible. And he shared a couple of books with me, one of which I'm actually taking away with me on that holiday that we were talking about. Um, but it's all about the mindset that you take into scenarios, right? So I touched on it when we were talking about planning. Plans are going to go wrong. Failures are going to happen, right? What's the mindset? If the mindset is one of optimism and of positivity, you will overcome that problem. If it's one of kind of limited, fixed, defeated kind of mindset, you'll never overcome it, right? We're all going to, we all doubt ourselves, have some degree of self-doubt. I remember, Gaurav, when you and I were talking about this and you were kind of wondering if I would agree to join you and, how are you going to try and convince me to do it? And at the other end of the spectrum, I'm thinking, gee, I don't know if I'm going to add value to a conversation with you because I've watched some of your YouTube channels or your YouTube channel, and I've seen some of the sessions and I'm excited by it, but I wasn't sure that leadership was where you wanted to go. And, we've talked about, I don't know how many topics today. We haven't really talked about planning and, how planning is everything, or we have in many different ways. But, I was sitting there thinking, gee, am I going to add value by doing this? So there's always a degree of self-doubt in every one of us. I mean, when I get up to do public speaking, I always am concerned about, gee, I hope I don't make a mistake, or I don't get it wrong, or I don't make a massive faux pas that, particularly in this day of kind of electronic media, gets spread all over the front pages of we all have some doubt about what we're doing. What I would say is, you've got to kind of park that, because if we let doubt control us, we'll have fear, then we won't achieve, right? So you kind of have to accept that there is going to be situations where maybe you're not the best person in the room. Maybe you're not the best soccer player on the field. Maybe you're not the best batsman out there, right? But if you believe that you could be, then that will help you at least move towards being that, right? If you don't, then you're never going to move towards being maybe the best batsman in the world, or the best bowler, or the best soccer player, or the best anything, right? And having some degree of self-doubt, I think, is actually a good motivator in itself, right? Because you then want to be better. You know that that's a limitation you have, and you want to be better at it, right? And it's healthy, I think, to have some degree of self-doubt. When I played sport, and in fact, here's a funny little kind of end to it, maybe. Even when I get up to do a public presentation, I'll go to the bathroom beforehand, maybe half an hour before, and then maybe 2 minutes before, I'll race to the bathroom again. It's kind of a nervousness, but I know that if I do that, then actually I find that I'm kind of more fluid, and I'm more me and more natural. And it sounds silly, and I'm going to regret even suggesting that that's what I do. But the reality is, I know that's a way for me to overcome the doubt that I have in my mind and move myself into the frame where I need to be to have the conversation or do the presentation or whatever it happens to be. And it certainly comes from my sporting career, where that was something that I used to do as a bit of my ritual before going on a football field. So,
well, absolutely correct. You put it across very great, Gary. I thought that self-doubt is equally important, because you cannot be good at every single thing that you do. So yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much, Abhineet, for putting out this thing for us. So Gary, thank you so much, first of all, from me and my entire team, for giving us your time. Now, what a small request for you to is just give us a few words, few advice, because I have always been a believer that today is your opportunity to build the tomorrow you want. And when you and me were discussing that, yes, plans are nothing, but planning is like everything. Now, the thought behind of that with my team was that we are not gonna just talk about planning. We are also gonna put down and plan that, yes, it is equally important to hear others' perspective. And I believe our audience would be joy after hearing a lot of your thoughts, and might find a grateful ingredient to be success in your life. So any piece of advice that you want to give to all the viewers?
So I think one of them is give it a go, right? I saw a question which we didn't get to. Did I ever think of opening my own business? I had my own business for a while. You got to try these things. You got to give it a go. If you don't give it a go, you'll never know, right? I think that's probably the thing that I would say to everybody is give it a go. Believe in yourself and give it a go.
Believe in yourself and give it a go. Yeah. Thank you so much, Gary, for giving your time. We are on top of ours. From all the viewers and my entire team, we are so grateful to hear your thoughts. And thank you so much for joining us. It's the late evening for you. But yeah, thank you so much, Gary, for joining us. Cheers to you. Thank you
Cheers,
so
mate.
much.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciated the opportunity. So
Yeah.
thanks,
Thank you so
everybody.
much. Yeah. Thank you. So, people out there, thank you so much for joining us. I'll be keep on bringing some more great leaders to whom I interact every single day. And for all the viewers who wants to connect to the Gary, Gary's LinkedIn ID is in the description. Go ahead, follow him, and whatever you want to ask, do drop it in the chat box so that at least he knows that yes, we all cherish his learning that he has shared with us. His experience is so valuable that even if you adopt a single thing out of it, definitely that seed will keep on growing. And as I rightly said, that tomorrow is an today is your opportunity to build the tomorrow you want. So, like, yes, time is equally important. Like, time is like a money. You can either spend it, waste it, or invest it. So, thank you so much for joining us. I'm signing off. Cheers with Gaurav. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much.